Sometimes it's not the strangers who drain you, not the critics, not the ones who oppose you openly. It's the ones who smile while you speak. But their eyes stay distant, the ones who applaud your victories. But their energy grows cold. The ones who claim to love you, but somehow you feel smaller around them. Carl Jung believed that the psyche protects itself through projection, casting what it can't accept in itself onto others. And often, envy is not expressed as anger or resentment. It's disguised as affection, polite, subtle, civilized, and yet you feel it. You leave the conversation feeling drained. You question yourself in ways you didn't before. You notice that your light feels dimmer after being around them, even though nothing wrong was said. This is the silent language of hidden envy. It doesn't scream. It doesn't always sabotage out loud, but it shows itself in pauses, in tones, in timing, in absence. You're not crazy for sensing it. You're not imagining the shift in temperature when you speak about your growth. Your nervous system is wiser than your logic. It knows who is safe and who is silently competing with you behind a smile. This video is not about paranoia. It's about awareness. Because sometimes the people who love you are not rooting for your healing. They're attached to the version of you that stayed small enough to make them feel secure. And when you rise, you trigger their shadow. So today we'll explore 13 signs that someone close to you may be secretly envious, even if they'd never admit it. Not to expose them, but to protect you, because you deserve to be seen, not just watched, celebrated, not tolerated. And the first step to that is knowing the difference. Sign 1. They compliment you, but always with a hint of irony or doubt. At first glance, sounds like praise. That's a nice achievement for someone like you. Wow, didn't expect that from you. You're lucky everything just works out, huh? You smile, unsure. It sounded like a compliment, but it didn't feel like one. Carl Jung taught that envy often hides behind projections, especially when the ego can't admit its own sense of inadequacy. So instead of confronting that discomfort, some people wrap it in sarcasm, in subtle digs, in praise that tastes like doubt. You begin to notice a pattern. They never say you're brilliant. They say you're lucky. They never say they're proud. They say must be nice. They don't congratulate, and they compare. And underneath it all is one message: don't get too confident. They're not celebrating your growth. They're managing their own discomfort with it. But you feel it. The tight smile, the lowered eyes, the awkward pause after your success is mentioned. That's not support, that's shadow. And while their words may pass as friendly, your intuition picks up the distortion. Because when someone truly honors you, their compliment lifts. It doesn't shrink you with invisible conditions. So listen to the tone behind the praise. Sometimes it reveals more than the words ever could. Sign 2. They imitate you, but pretend not to notice. You notice small things at first. They buy a shirt like yours, they use your phrases, they start pursuing the same interests you once shared with them casually. And when you bring it up, they act like it's coincidence, like they haven't noticed. Carl Jung believed that envy isn't always about wanting what you have. Sometimes it's about wanting to be you, to absorb your essence, your energy, your way of moving through the world. But instead of admiration, it comes with denial, because to admit they're copying you would mean admitting that something in you shines brighter than something in them. And the ego resists that truth. So they mimic, subtly, quietly, hoping to wear your energy like a second skin. But they never acknowledge the source. They never say, "You inspired me." Because envy doesn't give credit. It just takes. And while imitation can feel flattering, this doesn't. Because deep down you feel it's not coming from resonance, but rivalry. It's not about walking with you. It's about walking like you, then pretending it came from somewhere else. You are not paranoid. You are intuitive. And when people mirror your essence but hide their reflection, It's not because you're imagining things, it's because your energy awakens something they weren't ready to name. Sign 3. They react to your success with silence or flatness. You share your good news, a new job, a creative breakthrough, something you worked hard for. You wait for a smile, for joy, for the energy of celebration, but what you get is silence. A quick, nice, without eye contact, a change of subject, a pause that weighs more than words. Carl Jung taught that what we can't accept in ourselves, we resist in others. And sometimes your success reflects someone's failure to pursue their own growth. It's not that they don't care. It's that they can't celebrate you because your light reminds them of what they're not doing, and instead of rising, they withdraw. You may start to question yourself. Was I bragging? Did I say too much? No, you were sharing. You were offering connection. And their silence was not about you, it was about the shadow you accidentally exposed. When someone truly loves you, your joy expands them. It doesn't make them shrink. It doesn't make them go quiet. So if your wins are met with muted energy, if your milestones are met with emotional absence, pay attention. It's not always jealousy that speaks. Sometimes it's jealousy that stays quiet. And that silence says everything. Sign 4. They make jokes about your growth, disguised as concern. It starts off lightly, a sarcastic remark about your new goals, a playful dig at your shift in lifestyle, a just kidding that doesn't feel funny. You're really into that now. Wow, you've changed a lot. Don't forget where you came from. Be careful not to let that success go to your head. On the surface, it sounds like teasing, but underneath, it's discomfort. Their ego is being triggered by your evolution. And instead of facing it, they mask it with humor. Carl Jung spoke of the resistance the unconscious has to change. When someone close to you sees you breaking patterns, rising, becoming, they're forced to confront their own stagnation, and that stings. So instead of saying, "I'm inspired," they say, "Don't get carried away." They frame their envy as protectiveness. They present their doubts as wisdom, but the message is clear. Stay where I'm comfortable with you. They don't want to lose you, but they also don't want to rise with you. So they joke, they warn, they plant small seeds of hesitation. Pay attention to how your expansion makes others behave. True support feels like encouragement, not disguised disapproval. And no matter how soft the tone, some jokes carry the sharpest envy of all. Sign 5. They compete with you, even when there's nothing to compete for. You mention something simple, a moment of peace, a new interest, something that made you feel proud, and suddenly they one-up you. Their story becomes louder, their achievement becomes bigger. Their version of what you just shared turns into a quiet race. Even in conversations that don't need comparison, they find a way to measure. Carl Jung wrote about the ego's need to protect its identity at all costs. And when someone hasn't built a secure sense of self, your success becomes a threat. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you represent something they feel they lack. They don't consciously hate you. They just feel safer when they're ahead. When they feel more special, more seen. So they compete emotionally, socially, even spiritually. You talk about healing, and suddenly they've read more books than you. You talk about hardship, and they've suffered worse. You talk about your dreams, and they warn you not to expect too much. It's not a conversation. It's a silent scoreboard. But you're not playing, you're just living. Still, they can't stop comparing, not because they don't care, but because they care too much about how they're perceived next to you. And that's not friendship, that's a mirror they're trying to shatter, because your presence exposes the parts of them they haven't yet accepted, and their competition is a cry to feel worthy in your light. Sign 6. Their mood shifts when you're happy. You walk into the room light-hearted, excited, full of something good you want to share, and somehow the energy shifts. They frown. They grow quiet. They suddenly seem irritated, distant, or distracted. You ask if something's wrong. They say no, but your joy seems to have touched something in them that made them uncomfortable. Carl Jung explained that we unconsciously react to what we suppress within ourselves. When someone hasn't allowed themselves to feel free, fulfilled, or joyful, your happiness becomes a trigger. It reminds them of what they're not allowing themselves to experience. Instead of celebrating with you, they emotionally pull back, not because you did something wrong, but because your light entered a part of their psyche that was still in darkness. You'll notice it more the brighter you shine. Some people will grow with your happiness, others will shrink in response to it. They may not know they're doing it, but you feel it. Your wins feel uncomfortable to share. Your laughter feels too loud. You start questioning whether it's too much. It's not. Your joy isn't the problem. Their unresolved pain is. The people who are truly for you will mirror your happiness back to you, not try to mute it, because those who love you in wholeness don't just tolerate your light, they reflect. It's sign 7. They offer you advice that undermines your strength. They call it guidance. They say they're just trying to help, but every suggestion seems to lead you backward. You're sure you can handle that? Don't you think you're taking on too much? Maybe you should play it safe. At first, it sounds like concern, but the undertone is doubt. Carl Jung spoke about the subtle ways the unconscious sabotages what it doesn't understand or accept. When someone secretly envies your courage, they may wrap their fear in words that sound like support. But true guidance empowers. It expands. It helps you rise. This advice, it shrinks you. It makes you second-guess your decisions. It turns your fire into hesitation. They won't say they're jealous. They'll say they're being realistic. They won't admit they're uncomfortable. They'll say they're protecting you. But deep down, their words reveal a silent wish that you wouldn't grow too far beyond where they can follow. And you feel it. Their help comes with a weight. Their encouragement comes with invisible chains. It's not that you shouldn't receive advice. It's that you should notice how it feels in your body. Does it lift you or limit you? Does it spark clarity or confusion? Because sometimes the people who act like mentors are really just managing their own envy, hoping your power stays quiet enough not to shake their world. Sign 8. They reveal personal details about you in front of others. You're in a group. The mood is light. And then out of nowhere, they drop a comment. Something small but sensitive. Something personal you told them in confidence. Something you never expected to be shared. They laugh. They say, "I'm just joking." They act like it's no big deal, but inside you freeze. Carl Jung warned that envy often disguises itself through passive aggression. Little gestures meant to assert dominance when direct confrontation feels too risky. When someone close to you harbors secret envy, they may not attack directly. Instead, they'll aim to subtly shrink you by exposing something you wouldn't have chosen to reveal yourself. It's a micro-betrayal, a way to place you beneath them, without ever raising their voice. They want to remind the room that they know you, that they have access to your private layers, that they hold something you didn't offer anyone else. But true closeness is never used as leverage. Real friendship protects your vulnerability. It doesn't parade it. So when someone repeatedly uses your personal truth to get a laugh, earn attention, or shift power in a conversation, watch carefully. It's not a joke. It's a message. And the message is, I'm not comfortable with how others respect you, so I'll remind them of your cracks. But your truth isn't shameful, and the right people won't weaponize your softness, they'll honor it. Sign 9. They criticize you behind your back, but act warm to your face. They smile when they see you, ask how you're doing, say how proud they are of your progress. But later you hear whispers. Small comments that carry your name, details that only they knew, spoken with just enough venom to sting. Carl Jung taught that what we reject in ourselves is often projected onto others, and envy, especially when unacknowledged, doesn't always come out in confrontation. It seeps out sideways, through gossip, through subtle sabotage, through words meant to chip away at the image of the person they can't stop watching. They won't tell you how they really feel. They'll tell others. They'll plant doubts. They'll distort just enough of the truth to make you look small. And when you confront it, if you do, they'll say you're overreacting, they'll deny, they'll deflect, because they don't want a resolution. They want control. They want the world to love you less, so they don't have to deal with the discomfort of loving you more than they're willing to admit. This is one of the most painful forms of hidden envy, because it comes wrapped in friendship, but love that speaks differently behind your back than it does to your face is not love. It's a mask, and no matter how gentle their tone, if their words betray you in rooms you can't hear, their heart already has. Sign 10, they get closer. When you're struggling, and distant when you rise, you're going through something hard, and suddenly they're present, available, supportive. They offer comfort, check in, stay close. But when things start getting better, they pull away. Your victories don't excite them. Your peace makes them quiet. Your strength makes them disappear. Carl Jung spoke of how certain relationships are built on imbalance, where one person feels safer when the other is not thriving, because in your struggle, they feel needed. Valuable in control. But when you rise, emotionally, spiritually, financially, something shifts. They no longer feel superior. They no longer feel like the one who has it together. And rather than celebrate your return to wholeness, they create distance. You start to wonder why they were so loving during your darkness and so absent in your light. That's not real support. That's energetic dependency. They were never loving you. They were loving what your pain made them feel about themselves. And now that you've healed, you no longer reflect their strength. You reveal their avoidance. True support stays when you're down and cheers when you get up. So if someone only hugs you when you're hurting, but vanishes when you're shining, they're not supporting your healing. They're feeding off your wounds. Sign 11, they minimize your achievements with subtle remarks. You share something meaningful, a step you took, a challenge you overcame, a dream that became real. And they respond with something like, "That's nice, but a lot of people are doing that now. I guess it wasn't that hard after all. Good for you, and I almost tried that once." They don't say you don't deserve it. They just make it sound ordinary, forgettable, replaceable. Carl Jung wrote that what we can't fully become, we often attempt to diminish. And someone secretly envious may not attack your success. They'll just quietly strip it of meaning. Not because it's not special, but because if they admit how special it is, they'll have to admit something in you awakened what's missing in them. So they belittle, downplay, reframe your joy as luck or coincidence. It sounds like casual conversation, but it lands like a shadow, because instead of celebrating you, they reduce you, and you leave the interaction wondering if you were ever enough. You were, you still are. And what they can't honor has nothing to do with your worth, and everything to do with their pain. You don't need loud applause, but you deserve quiet respect. And if someone consistently makes your brightness feel dim, it's not your light that's the problem. It's their eyes that never learned how to look at something shining without flinching. Sign 12. They exclude you from subtle things, even when you're right there. You're close. You've always been part of the circle, but lately something feels different. They plan things without telling you. They make decisions that affect you but don't include your voice. They share moments, but not with you. And when you ask about it, they say, "Oh, it was last minute. We figured you were busy." It wasn't a big deal, but it feels like a big deal, because you were there, just not seen. Carl Jung believed that when someone feels threatened by your presence, they unconsciously try to reduce your influence. And one way that envy hides itself is through invisibilization, making you feel left out not with cruelty, but with calculated indifference. They won't confront you. They'll simply ignore you in small, repeated ways. Not because you don't belong, but because they're not sure how to belong next to your growth. So they shrink you by pretending you're not essential. They mute you through omission. And it hurts because it's not rejection with teeth. It's rejection with silence. But that silence speaks. You didn't imagine being left out. You didn't read too much into their distance. You felt it because it was real. Love includes. It informs, it invites. And if someone consistently forgets you when it matters, they're not forgetting. They're choosing, and that choice says more than their words ever will. Sign 13. You feel drained or anxious around them, without knowing why. There's no obvious conflict, no harsh words, no clear betrayal, and yet, every time you're with them, something in you feels off. Your chest tightens, your energy sinks, you leave the interaction more tired than when you arrived. Carl Jung believed that the body often senses what the conscious mind cannot yet name. And when someone harbors hidden envy toward you, even if they smile, even if they're kind, your nervous system knows, because energy doesn't lie. And what the heart won't say, the frequency still transmits. You may have brushed it off, told yourself you were being dramatic, blamed it on being tired or sensitive. But your body isn't confused, it's communicating. When you feel small around someone who claims to love you, pay attention. When you feel anxious around someone who says they support you, listen. You don't need proof to trust your perception. You need presence. The truth is, some people can't fully meet you because your light disturbs what they haven't healed, and even if they never admit it, you feel it. You don't need drama to create distance. You don't need a reason to protect your peace. You only need to honor that quiet message within you that says, this doesn't feel safe. Because sometimes the strongest sign of envy is the ache you carry after the room goes quiet. Now you understand. It wasn't just in your head, the tightness in your chest, the weight in the room, the smile that didn't reach their eyes, the silence after your success. You weren't imagining it. Your energy was translating what their words refused to say. Carl Jung taught that when someone cannot integrate their own shadow, they project it. And sometimes what they project is envy, wrapped in politeness, hidden in kindness, masked by affection. It's painful because it's subtle, because it comes from people you thought were safe, because it doesn't look like betrayal. It looks like distance, awkward laughter, flat congratulations, withheld presence. But the truth is simple. When someone secretly envies you, it's not your fault, it's not your responsibility, and it's not something you can fix by being smaller. In fact, the more you expand, the more it may happen, because your growth forces people to confront their own stagnation. Your joy reflects their forgotten dreams. Your peace reminds them of the war they're still fighting inside. But listen closely. You don't have to dim your light to make others comfortable. You don't have to question your intuition just because they call it paranoia. You don't have to keep proving that your love is real while they bury their resentment in smiles. You just have to stand in truth, quietly, clearly, fully, because the greatest protection is not accusation, it's awareness. And once you see it, you're no longer vulnerable to it. So if this message gave language to something you've been sensing, write in the comments. I see what they won't say. Let that be your boundary, your clarity, your quiet exit from what no longer honors your frequency. You are not too much. You are just no longer easy to diminish, and that is your power.